Hello, my name is Sean Ross, composer of the opera Tchaikovsky, Angel of Music. I made an earlier message containing a general overview of the opera, but for those of you interested in finding out more about the work, its genesis, the history of its development, where it came from, I'm making this message now. My special partiality to the music of Tchaikovsky was given birth long before the opera itself was ever thought of. As a young child, highly sensitive and deeply impressionable to music, the music of Tchaikovsky struck a special chord within me. In the earliest years of my life, my parents had in their possession but one cassette tape in the classical genre. Purchased by my mother while she was pregnant with me, it featured a selection of pieces drawn from the much-loved ballet music of Tchaikovsky. Certainly, it seems plausible to me that the seed of this future opera was itself conceived with me in my mother's womb, for I believe that the future realization of this work was fated, and that it has always been my destiny to write it. In my first year at the University of Melbourne, having discovered a special affinity with the music the year before, I was compelled to make a full investigation into the life and work of Tchaikovsky. Particularly throughout the first half of my course, I seized upon the opportunity which relatively few contact hours afforded me of devouring everything I could get my hands on. Burning with what seemed to be an insatiable hunger, I hid away in the music library where, in time, I listened to all Tchaikovsky's works, studying the scores and taking special note of the inimitable beauty of his orchestrations. As I read for the first time the much-acclaimed biography of the composer, written by Alexander Poznanski, The Quest for the Inner Man, in addition to that of his playwright brother Modest Tchaikovsky, I was struck by the many compelling parallels which existed between Tchaikovsky the man, that is, his nature, his psyche, his unique artistic sensibility, and those of myself. Reading the many letters he wrote to his patroness, Nadezhda von Meck, from which I would later come to draw as the principal inspiration for the composition of the libretto, I couldn't help but feeling I must have either been the composer or otherwise known him intimately, for I honestly felt as though I could have been reading about myself. As I made my own comprehensive study of Tchaikovsky's music, I felt as though I was rediscovering something precious which I had known and loved passionately in some distant past. In my years at uni, I couldn't help but be overwhelmed by the conviction that I knew this music intimately, and furthermore, that I had a rare and special insight not only into where it came from, that which served to inspire it, but also into the very life of he whose creative mediumship gave it birth. Throughout the final year of my course, I wrote an orchestral introduction to the work, one or two pieces intended for the future opera, and a detailed synopsis. However, it wasn't until after I graduated in 1999 that I first began to write pieces inspired directly by the various scenes I'd envisaged would be depicted in the work. In conjunction with vocal accompaniment, conducting study, and some freelance singing teaching, the opera developed slowly by osmosis, and in what seemed like perfect synchronicity with the journey of my own life. It wasn't until after my conducting debut in 2002, however, that I decided to devote all my creative energies towards working exclusively on the opera until such time as it could be completed. In this way, throughout a period of roughly 6 years, the opera came into being. Now, this opera is unlike many others in the sense that it does not revolve exclusively around the singers, and as is especially the case with most Italian operas. Instead, it features a more even balance between the four elements, which contribute in their own way to bringing the story to life. Not only does the opera feature singers who help recreate the depiction of crucial moments in Tchaikovsky's life, but it also features dancers. Their movement appears right throughout the work, but is highlighted most prominently during the conversations we witness between Tchaikovsky and his nephew, which, taking place throughout the last year of the composer's life, we observe in the present. Indeed, these conversations themselves provide stylistic contrast throughout, for they form the main body of recitative, which, given its complexity, is recited like poetry over music, rather than being sung. This distinction in musical texture further helps to clearly delineate those sections of the work which recreate the past from those which depict the present. Since music was the very lifeblood of Tchaikovsky's existence, I felt it to be of paramount importance then that the music itself play a highly prominent role in the storytelling of his piece. I have therefore always perceived the music in an absolute sense to be representative of the very soul of the composer, and thus consider the orchestra to be one of the main protagonists of the work, on an equal footing with the singers. As such, the music serves not only to support and accompany the singing throughout, but assumes a role of far greater prominence than has often previously been accorded to the orchestra in works of this kind. It is imperative the singers be viewed as but one thread in the fabric of the work. Yes, at times they play a rather prominent role, as is only to be expected in any opera, yet overall their position within the hierarchy of this work is far less predominant than in many other operas. Due to the sometimes overwhelming preeminence of the role of the orchestra, it will most likely be necessary to subtly amplify the singers, and therefore the orchestra itself in sections, in order to achieve an overall balanced and homogeneous sound throughout. I hope this has given you a good idea of what the opera is about, how it's structured, where it came from, and I hope I've piqued your interest. Thank you.